collectively hunted these women down. And you murdered them.
I have been tortured by this for 27 years. I doubt that you will even have to suffer for as long as I have.
It's going to take me a while, but I do pray for your soul.
I'm telling you, she's an evil person. She's an evil person, and whatever they need to do to keep her there, do it.
Living with a prostitute and involved in the community. And then, more than 2 decades later, the state cherry picks evidence, tries to put Miss Perry in the center of it, and make it all fit.
Beneath their calm smiles and quiet lives hid something unthinkable. These women did not just break the law, they shattered lives. From Lao Rongzhi's brutal crimes to Juana Barraza, a former wrestler who turned into a serial killer, these ruthless female killers shocked the world and reacted coldly to their life sentences. Their stories are dark, disturbing, and unforgettable. Let's begin.
Kathy Woods and Gwen Graham picked and chose who was going to die and followed through with the murders of my mother and the other ladies.
In 1987, in a quiet Michigan suburb, something horrifying happened behind the closed doors of a local nursing home. 2 women, Kathy Wood and Gwendolyn Graham, were working as nurses' aides at the Alpine Manor nursing home when a dark secret began to unravel. What started as a friendship quickly turned into a dangerous relationship that ended with the mournful deaths of 5 innocent elderly patients. Graham had just moved from Texas to Michigan and met Kathy Wood at work. They quickly became close, more than just friends, and began a secret relationship. But behind their bond was something deeply troubling. According to Kathy, the pair began a love game, where taking lives became their twisted way of staying connected. She claimed they smothered 5 elderly patients, choosing victims based on their names to spell out a disturbing message. And when that became too difficult, they simply counted each killing as another day in their love story. For a while, no one suspected anything. The deaths looked natural, and most of the victims were elderly and already in fragile health. However, things took a turn when Kathy told her ex-husband about the deaths. He went to the police, and investigators began digging into the case. Kathy slowly began sharing more details, saying that Gwendolyn was the one who committed the killings, while she just acted as the lookout. 2 of the victims were exhumed, but no clear physical evidence could confirm smothering. Still, based on Kathy's testimony, both women were arrested in December of 1988. In court, Kathy made a deal. She agreed to testify against Gwendolyn in exchange for a reduced sentence. She claimed Gwendolyn was the controlling one, the one who did the killing. But Gwendolyn told a very different story. She said Kathy was playing a twisted game of her own, spinning lies to punish her for leaving the relationship. The jury heard from Gwendolyn's new girlfriend, who testified that Gwendolyn had confessed to the killings. That sealed her fate. What drove the 2 women to commit such terrible crimes is still debated. Kathy said it was about love, that they wanted to stay bonded forever through a dark secret. She even wrote a poem that ended with the line, "You'll be mine forever and 5 days." But others said it was all about control and revenge. According to the book Forever in 5 Days, Kathy may have been the true mastermind, driven by jealousy and rage after catching Gwendolyn with another woman. Some believed she framed Gwendolyn entirely, making up the killings or even committing them herself just to get even. On November 3, 1989, Gwendolyn Graham was found guilty of 5 counts of murder and 1 count of conspiracy. She was sentenced to 5 life terms and remains behind bars, yet she showed no emotion as the verdict was announced. Kathy Wood, on the other hand, was charged with 1 count of second-degree murder and conspiracy. She served her time and was released in 2020. She now lives with family in South Carolina. This case left the families of the victims heartbroken, having trusted Alpine Manor to care for their loved ones. Many still struggle with the idea that such evil could take place in a setting meant to provide safety and comfort. Perhaps the most chilling part is the mystery that still lingers. Whether Gwendolyn was truly the killer or Kathy Wood manipulated the system and got away with the crime remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: the families of the 5 victims will carry this pain forever. Our next case uncovers a killer who is hiding behind a new identity.
And you'll hear during the course of this trial that Mr. Perry became Ms. Perry to end this type of violence.
In the early 1990s, 3 women were found dead near the Spokane River in Washington. At the time, police believed they were victims of a known serial killer who was already behind bars. For over 20 years, no one knew who killed them. But here's the thing. Back in 1990, Donna was not known as Donna at all. She was Douglas Perry, a man with a violent past and a hidden dark side. Yolanda Sapp, Nikki Lowe, and Kathleen Brisbois were 3 women trying to navigate difficult lives. Each of them faced personal struggles, including challenges with stability and safety. Between February and May of 1990, all 3 were reported missing and later found near the riverbank under mysterious circumstances. Their stories, though separate, became tragically connected during that time. At the time, investigators had no idea who could have committed these terrible acts. But there was one detail they never let go of. They believed the killer had likely left behind DNA. Fast forward to 2012, Donna Perry, now living as a woman after undergoing gender-affirming surgery in 2000, was arrested on a weapons charge. As part of the legal process, her DNA was taken and entered into a national database. What police discovered left them stunned. Her DNA matched all 3 unsolved death cases from 1990. Now, detectives had to uncover the story behind the new identity and the violent past. When questioned, Donna made a strange claim. She said the killing might have been committed by Douglas Perry, her former male identity, as if Donna and Douglas were 2 entirely different people. She explained that she had undergone surgery in Thailand to stop violent urges and became a new person. But prosecutors did not believe her. They argued she changed her identity to avoid justice, not to escape atrocity. While Perry never clearly admitted the motive, the court heard that she had confessed to a fellow inmate about killing 9 women in total. She said she targeted intimate workers because she believed no one would miss them. Her background was filled with red flags, such as arrests for conflicts and possession of weapons. The warning signs were there all along, but no one connected them until it was too late.
We, the jury, find the defendant Donna Rebecca Perry guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree as charged in count 1.
In July 2017, Donna Perry was found guilty of all 3 murders and sentenced to 3 life terms without the chance of parole. She's now behind bars at the Washington Correction Center for Women. However, she had no guilt for her actions. The story of Donna Perry is deeply disturbing. It's a reminder that real danger can hide behind many faces, and sometimes even a new identity cannot erase a dark past. For the families of Yolanda, Nikki, and Kathleen, justice came decades too late, but it did come. Their voices, once silenced, were finally heard in court. Our next case reveals a deadly pattern that was discovered too late.
A 33-year-old Columbus woman has been indicted for 4 murders and an attempted murder.
The Attorney General saying Rebecca Arburn met men and for sex and drugged them so that she could then rob them.
On October 30th, 2023, a woman named Rebecca Arburn walked into a courtroom in Columbus, Ohio. But this was not a typical court appearance. Behind her quiet expression was a case that had stunned the entire state. 4 men were dead. Another had barely survived. All of them had one thing in common. They had crossed paths with Rebecca. It all began when police noticed a disturbing pattern. Several men were found dead in their homes with no signs of forced entry. Each case looked like an accidental overdose until detectives noticed the connection. They had all been in contact with the same woman. Rebecca, a 34-year-old who offered personal companionship, wasn't just spending time with them. According to authorities, she had also been giving them something harmful without their knowledge. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered more than just tragic coincidences. Nearly 30 charges were filed against Rebecca, including murder, aggravated robbery, and felonious assault. The charges revealed a chilling pattern. After meeting her clients, she allegedly gave them harmful substances, stole from them, and left them in critical condition. But things took a turn when she was accused of trying to harm a 5th victim, a man who somehow survived the incident. His statement helped prosecutors piece together the case. Rebecca pleaded not guilty, claiming she wasn't mentally fit to stand trial. But that changed in February 2025, when an Ohio judge officially ruled her competent. The court stated that she understands the nature of the trial and can participate in her defense. Authorities believe Rebecca was targeting men who were vulnerable and easily influenced. She gained their trust, gave them something dangerous without their knowledge, and took their belongings once they were no longer alert. It wasn't just about the substances. It was about what she could steal once her victims could no longer resist. As of now, Rebecca's trial is expected to move forward. She remains in custody, continues to deny the charges, and has shown no reaction. Her lawyer hasn't commented publicly, and the court has yet to announce a trial date. For families of the victims, it's a small step toward justice. One woman, Christine Crockett, whose father, Wayne Akin, was among the dead, said she was relieved. Now she hopes that a fair trial will give her family the answers and accountability they've been waiting for. Our next case is a nightmare, where a masked wrestler hid a deadly secret behind the spotlight.
Son 759 años por el merecimiento de pena porque lo que no sería justo es...
In the late 1990s, Juana Barraza was known in Mexico City as a quiet, heavy-set woman who once worked as a professional wrestler. She went by the name La Dama del Silencio, the Lady of Silence. Based on the information the press could gather, no one suspected that behind that mask was one of the most feared serial killers the country had ever seen. Juana's life began with trauma. Born in a small rural town, her mother traded her for just 3 beers to a man who mistreated her repeatedly. She became a mother while still a child herself. Years later, Juana found fame as a masked wrestler, but behind that mask was a woman filled with deep resentment, especially toward elderly women. Between the late 1990s and early 2000s, a troubling pattern of incidents involving elderly women began to emerge across Mexico City. Most of the women were over the age of 60 and lived alone. At first, authorities believed these events were unrelated, but as more cases appeared, concerns spread throughout the city. The situation became increasingly serious as it became clear that someone was targeting vulnerable members of the community. The police were confused. Some believed the killer was a man, while others thought there might be more than one person involved. They even arrested innocent people based on vague clues. There was also a strange coincidence because many victims had the same print of an old painting in their homes. But everything changed in January 2006. An 82-year-old woman named Ana Maria de los Reyes Alfaro was found strangled with a stethoscope. A neighbor spotted someone fleeing her home, and the police chased the suspect down. To everyone's shock, the killer was not a man. It was 48-year-old Juana Barraza, who was caught red-handed with social service forms, a stethoscope, and identification posing as a welfare worker. It turned out she had been tricking victims by pretending to be a government official offering benefits. Once they let her in, she attacked. Fingerprints linked her to at least 10 killings. She admitted to 4, but denied the rest. However, police believed she may have killed more than 40 women. During her trial in 2008, Juana showed no signs of guilt. She only admitted to the death of Ana Maria, saying she was angry about not being paid for cleaning. But prosecutors believed her hatred for elderly women came from her hatred of her mother. Experts described her as a psychopath who showed no remorse. They believed she saw each elderly woman as a replacement for her mother, who had mistreated her and convinced herself she was helping society by killing them. On March 31, 2008, Juana Barraza was found guilty of 16 counts of murder and other charges. She was sentenced to 759 years in prison. The case of Juana Barraza shocked Mexico. How could someone who wore a hero's mask in the wrestling ring turn into such a monster? Her story is one of betrayal, trauma, and rage, where a lifetime of pain twisted into something deadly. And while she claimed to be silencing her past, what she did was take the lives of innocent people, including mothers, grandmothers, and kind neighbors who opened their doors to the wrong person. Our next case is a chilling tale of a teacher whose charm hid a deadly plot that took innocent lives.
Also threatened to acquire their property. Eventually, the couple turned to murdering people.
In the late 1990s, a former school teacher became one of China's most feared criminals. Her charm was disarming. Her method was cold and calculated. And after more than 20 years on the run, justice finally caught up with her. This is the disturbing case of Lao Rongzhi, a woman who lured her victims with a smile and then stood by as their lives were taken away. At first glance, Lao Rongzhi appeared harmless. She had once worked as a primary school teacher in Jiangxi province, but behind her quiet appearance was a terrifying secret. From 1996 to 1999, Lao, along with her boyfriend Fa Ziying, committed a string of violent crimes across several provinces in China. These included Jiangxi, Zhejiang, Jiangsu, and Anhui. The couple robbed, kidnapped, and killed at least 7 people. Lao played a very specific role. She picked the targets. Most of them were men she met at karaoke bars or other entertainment venues. She earned their trust, invited them to a private location, and once they arrived, Fa carried out the attack. In one of the most shocking cases, Lao lured a man named Zhang to her rented apartment in Nanchang. There, she and Fa robbed him, killed him, and then dismembered his body. Lao used a key she had taken from Zhang to enter his home. Together with Fa, she robbed the place. To remove any witnesses, they also killed Zhang's wife and their 2-year-old daughter. Eventually, Fa was caught by police in 1999 and was executed later that year, but Lao managed to escape. She went underground, using fake identities and living in secrecy. For over 20 years, she remained hidden until one day in November 2019. At a shopping mall in Xiamen, she was recognized and arrested. After her arrest, Lao was charged with intentional homicide, kidnapping, and robbery. What investigators discovered was even more horrifying than expected. She had helped choose victims, watched as they were tortured and killed, and showed no signs of stopping. Many of the bodies were mutilated and left in gruesome conditions. She tried to defend herself by saying Fa had controlled her and that she had no choice. But the courts disagreed. The evidence showed she had a leading role. In 2021, she was sentenced to death. Tears welled up in her eyes as the verdict was read. The ruling was later confirmed by the Jiangxi High People's Court. At the core of it all was money and survival. Lao and Fa stole more than 100,000 yuan, which is roughly $14,000 US. But the court believed it was more than just about money. According to the Supreme People's Court, Lao acted with deep malice. Her crimes were brutal, and her actions were deliberate. She was not an innocent bystander. She planned the crimes, helped carry them out, and showed no remorse. Lao Rongzhi was executed by the Nanchang Intermediate People's Court. Before her execution, she met with her relatives and expressed an apology to the families of her victims. But for many, no apology could ever undo the pain she caused. The Supreme Court declared that her crimes were cruel and the consequences were devastating. They upheld the original verdict. Her political rights were permanently revoked, and all her assets were confiscated. She once stood in front of children as a teacher. Years later, she stood in court as a killer. The case of Lao Rongzhi reminds us that evil can sometimes hide behind the most ordinary faces. The next case shows how fast obsession can turn into violence. Giselle Douag Esteban didn't just lose control. She planned her revenge down to the final moment.
An emotional day in court for a local family. The woman convicted of murder in a love triangle showed no signs of remorse.
On the 27th of May, 2011, 26-year-old American nursing student Michelle Huang T. Lei was declared missing after her white Honda SUV was found parked with her blood stains inside on Ponderosa Court, about half a mile from Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in Hayward, California, where she schooled and worked. Despite Michelle's family putting up billboards and offering a reward for information about her whereabouts, it wouldn't be until the 17th of September that year that search organizations were able to locate decomposed human remains in a remote canyon area, remains which were identified to be hers. 27-year-old Giselle Douag Esteban, an old high school friend of Michelle's, quickly emerged as the main suspect after security footage showed her around the scene of the crime. Her motive behind the possible murder of her old friend would become clearer on closer inspection.
At one point, you and Michelle were close friends, is that right?
Considered her my sister.
And then, what happened?
She made a mistake. Scott made a mistake.
Esteban used to be high school classmates and friends with Michelle, but grew to hate her after she had a brief relationship with Scott Marasigan, Esteban's ex-boyfriend, on and off fling, and father of their 6-year-old daughter. Esteban was unhappy about Marasigan's sustained closeness with Michelle, and often sent him threatening texts to warn him away from her. This behavior ended up in Marasigan filing for a restraining order against her, an action which would lead to her attempt to target her frustrations on Michelle. Evidence revealed that Esteban had not only been looking up different ways to execute a murder, but also been tracking Michelle's routines and learning about her schedule, which was how she was able to be successful in her sneak attack attempt on Michelle at her school, and also how she was able to drive off in Michelle's car to the path where her body was dumped. Evidence of Esteban's hair found inside Michelle's car and cell phone records further solidified the undeniability that Esteban was directly responsible for Michelle's murder. And on the 7th of September, 2011, days before Michelle's body was even found, Esteban was arrested and charged with the murder. At Esteban's trial on October 2012, she entered a not guilty plea, but the amount of evidence against her was overwhelming, and the jury convicted her of first-degree murder. She was eventually sentenced on the 10th of December 2012 to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. During her sentencing, Esteban showed no emotion in court, remaining as remorseless as she was when the jury returned its guilty verdict at her October trial. She seemed to accept the verdict and even told her attorney to let it go, suggesting that she didn't need to defend her anymore.
The judge says he has never seen a hint of remorse from Esteban and hopes someday she will feel this.
We always felt, sitting in trial, that she felt no remorse. Just stared directly at our family with a blank stare, and so it was good that he pointed that out.
Struggling to control her emotions in an address to the judge, Christine Din, a cousin of Michelle, said that although Esteban may have killed Michelle, she could not take her legacy or her light. Esteban had been pregnant around the time of the murder and gave birth to a child while in custody a few months before her hearing. While the child left custody and was handed over to her father, Esteban is set to remain behind bars at least until the year 2037. Giselle Duag Esteban's betrayal and calculated actions shocked everyone who followed the case, but the next story is just as chilling. Angelina Rodriguez, a woman whose sinister plan revealed a terrifying willingness to destroy lives for personal gain.
I didn't poison my husband. I mean, I am willing to take a lie detector test. I did not poison my husband.
On the 9th of September 2000, police turned up at the residence of Frank and Angelina Rodriguez due to an emergency call. 32-year-old Angelina, who received them, then led them to the couple's bedroom where Frank's lifeless body lay on the floor in a pool of his blood. What the investigation into the incident revealed was the perpetration of a quite horrific set of actions. Jose Francisco Rodriguez had first met his wife Angelina in February 2000 following his first divorce, and very quickly came to call her his soulmate. By April 2000, they were married, with Angelina's 9-year-old daughter, Autumn, joining the family as part of what was her mother's 4th marriage. His new wife, having 3 previous failed marriages, wasn't enough to set any alarm bells ringing for Frank, and his marriage, which he thought would be the beginning of a beautiful life ahead, would end up leading to his horrific death. Only a few months after getting married, Frank found himself hospitalized, and after he was discharged, he thought his wife Angelina was nursing him back to health. However, it appeared that she had been slowly poisoning him with oleander leaf extracts, and then choosing to treat him with Gatorade infused with antifreeze. In between those actions, she had also at least once loosened the natural gas valves in the garage and left to visit a friend. It was obvious that Angelina was repeatedly trying to kill her husband, and he would eventually succumb to the antifreeze-infused Gatorade. The suspected reason behind her actions was that she had taken a sum of $250,000 out of her husband's life insurance only weeks before his death. When the police arrived at the scene of the crime, they were surprised at Angelina's rather calm demeanor after losing her husband. She also contacted the insurance company to inquire about the money only a few minutes after the coroner's investigators left the residence. However, despite the investigators' suspicions, there was no way to immediately conclude that Angelina had a hand in the murder. It would be Angelina herself who would expose herself during interrogations after she mentioned the potential usage of oleander and antifreeze as poisoning agents to authorities.
And the only person that supplied any information that Frank was poisoned was you. No one else knew that Frank was poisoned. Only you.
Despite trying to blame one of Frank's co-workers, there was no doubt in the investigators' minds that Angelina was the main suspect. And in February 2001, she was arrested while hatching another plan to trap their landlord in a legal case for asbestos poisoning. Angelina was convicted of Frank's murder in October 2003. And during her trial, she was also implicated with the murder of her 13-month-old daughter back in 1993, with allegations that she also committed the murder for financial gains. She would, however, deny these allegations.
I broke and made a few terrible, stupid mistakes, which I regret very much. We all make mistakes. I just picked the wrong time to make mine. But murder is not on that list.
Despite denying any wrongdoing in Frank's death, the court sentenced Angelina to death on the 12th of January 2004. The complete absence of any remorse in Angelina's reaction throughout her trial left the court so shocked that the judge stated to the court that he hadn't seen a heart colder than hers for 20 years.
On January 12, 2004, Angelina was convicted and sentenced. She was sentenced to death, not only for the murder of Frank, but also for the calculated way in which she had orchestrated his demise for financial gain.
In November 2010, the California Supreme Court unanimously upheld Angelina's conviction and death sentence. But in November 2024, Angelina, now 56, was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, based on Angelina's claim of ineffective assistance from her attorney. She remains behind bars at Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. Angelina Rodriguez's calculated crime showcased a chilling level of manipulation, but the next case delves into an even darker scheme. Brenda Delgado, a woman who orchestrated a shocking murder fueled by jealousy and revenge.
Passion in Dallas. Brenda Delgado, the mastermind in the murder-for-hire plot targeting a Dallas dentist, today convicted of capital murder. Delgado hired a hitman to kill her ex-boyfriend's new love interest, Dr. Kendra Hatcher, in an uptown parking garage.
On the evening of September 2nd, 2015, 35-year-old Kendra Hatcher was shot dead in her parking garage by a suspected robber who fled the scene in a black Cherokee Jeep. The incident was heard by an eyewitness who contacted 911, and the revelations from the case shocked everyone. Hatcher had been dating dermatologist Ricky Paniagua for a few months, and the couple had intentions to get married. However, she was unaware of the obsessive nature of Paniagua's ex, 36-year-old Brenda Delgado, who had been stalking the couple following her own breakup with Ricky a few months earlier. Delgado had been in a nearly 3-year relationship with Paniagua before they split in February 2015, but the pair had remained in platonic contact. However, while Paniagua only had honest intentions, Delgado had been plotting something sinister. An autopsy of Hatcher's murder quickly revealed that her death wasn't a robbery situation gone wrong, but an actual murder attempt. This meant that the list of suspects was quickly narrowed down to one: Brenda Delgado. Delgado had apparently recruited 2 individuals: a 31-year-old local substance dealer named Christopher Love, who was responsible for the shooting, and 23-year-old Crystal Cortez, a single mother who drove the getaway vehicle and bribed them with cash. Delgado had borrowed the getaway vehicle from a friend, Jose Luis Ortiz, who she happened to be with on the evening of Hatcher's murder. After spotting his Jeep on the news, Ortiz contacted investigators to inform them that he loaned it to Delgado, but that she had been with him on the night of the murder.
I gave her a comment like, hey, have you heard about that dentist that got shot in Uptown Dallas? She said no. She said, well, how funny, because I mean it looks very similar to mine. I'm over here lending you my car.
When invited for initial questioning, Delgado told the investigators that she had lent the car to Cortez, subsequently resulting in the arrest of Love and Cortez, who both chose to testify against her.
I got $500.
And who paid you?
Brenda did.
Sensing ominous consequences after the apprehension of her hitman, Delgado fled to her native Mexico in hopes to escape justice. However, after being named in the FBI's top 10 list of most wanted female fugitives, with a $100,000 bounty on her head, she accepted extradition to the United States on the basis that she doesn't face the death penalty. After her extradition, Delgado faced trial for her evil actions on the 7th of June 2019, and it didn't take long for the jurors to convict her on charges of capital murder. She was eventually sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
You can't even look at me.
Delgado refused to lift her eyes, but was forced to listen as Dr. Hatcher's sister confronted her from the witness stand.
During Delgado's trial, Jennifer Escobar, a former friend and roommate of hers, revealed that she had been obsessed with Paniagua and had long since had plans to execute Hatcher, and possibly even Paniagua himself.
Let's get rid of Kendra Hatcher.
And why did she want to get rid of Kendra Hatcher?
Because she was envious of her.
During her sentencing, Delgado maintained a cold, emotionless look as she was consigned to her fate behind bars.
Jury unanimously find the defendant guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment. Thank you, ma'am.
During the victim impact statements, Hatcher's mother, Bonnie Jameson, told Delgado that she had earned her spot behind the cold steel bars for the rest of her life, adding the damning statement, "If justice could have handed you a death sentence, make no mistake, I would have been there front and center."
Have earned your spot on this earth behind cold steel bars for the rest of your miserable, pathetic life.
Today, Delgado is locked up at the maximum security William P. Hobby Unit for Women in unincorporated Falls County, Texas, where she is expected to remain for the rest of her life. As for her murder accomplices, Love is currently on death row for executing the murder, while Cortez was offered a 35-year sentence in exchange for testifying against the other two. Brenda Delgado's cold-blooded crime left everyone in shock. But the next case takes us to another deeply unsettling story. Keandria Cook, a young woman whose actions led to a devastating loss of life and tore apart her own family. What was supposed to be a carjacking crime and nothing more turned deadly in Daytona, Florida. Keandria Cook was 18 years old when she committed a crime that would change her life forever. Cook had been dating her boyfriend, Kendrick Bass, for a while before he proposed a business opportunity to help them get money faster. Cook agreed to this, and they began devising a plan. On March 22, 2017, Keandria Cook went on the Meet Me social app and started talking to 28-year-old Perry Nita. Cook then lured Perry from Palm Coast to South Daytona with talks of sex and marijuana. Nita agreed to meet with Cook and told her he was on his way. He invited 18-year-old Emmanuel Purcell to ride along with him. When they got to the location, they met Cook as she promised, and she got into the pickup truck with Nita and Purcell. After she entered the pickup, Bass waited for a while before he jumped in the back seat with a gun. When Purcell noticed this, he pushed Bass, who shot Purcell before he and Cook escaped. Purcell survived and soon talked to the police about what had happened. 2 days after this happened, Cook and Bass teamed up for another carjacking. It was at the time that Cook was arrested. Bass, on the other hand, ran away and would go on to evade police for 10 months. Meanwhile, Keandria was arrested and charged under the impression that she would not be sent to jail. Regardless, she was charged with conspiracy, carjacking, attempted carjacking with a deadly weapon, and felony battery. The conspiracy charge meant that Keandria could be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Because of miscommunication with her lawyer, Keandria and her mother were assured that she would not be going to prison if she took a plea deal. Her attorney told her to enter a no-contest plea to get the conspiracy charge dropped. If she pleaded no contest to principal to carjacking with a deadly weapon, principal to attempted carjacking with a deadly weapon, and principal to aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, she would get probation and not go to jail. Or at least that's what she thought. Following the advice of her attorney, Keandria pleaded no contest and appeared in court with the belief that it was just a formality. Keandria and her mother were shocked when Circuit Judge Matt Foxman sentenced Keandria to 20 years in prison, with 20 years of probation to run concurrent with her jail time. Hearing this, Keandria and her mother began to wail very loudly. This courtroom footage quickly went viral and gained millions of views from netizens. Many people who read the story were quick to point out that it was the fault of the public defender who initially argued her case. Cook was wailing before she broke down and had to be carried out of the courtroom. She reportedly passed out. During the next court appearance, Judge Foxman allowed Cook to withdraw her plea deal after she provided a recording where her former attorney assured her that she would not be going to jail. Her sentence was also thrown out, and she was allowed to start the sentencing afresh in 2018. This time around, Cook didn't cry because she knew what she was getting herself into. She entered into a no-contest plea again, and this time she was sentenced to 11 years in prison, with 20 years of probation to run concurrent with her jail term.
I just want to say that I'm sorry to the people wrong that her son had me shot because I didn't even know he was going to get shot.
Before she was escorted away, she apologized to the family of the victim, telling them that she didn't mean for their son to get shot. Keandria Cook will be free from prison in 2029. Kendrick Bass, on the other hand, was eventually caught 10 months later for an unrelated crime. Concerning the crime he committed together with Cook, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Keandria Cook conspired to rob someone, and this almost led to murder. But how does it compare to the horrific crime of beating a toddler to death over a potty accident? How bad of a mess can a toddler make to make it justifiable to beat her to death? Well, for 25-year-old Erica Butts and Shanita Cunningham, all the toddler had to do was urinate on the floor. In 2009, Leisha Richardson took her 3-year-old daughter Serenity Richardson to visit her godmother. Erica Butts was Serenity's godmother and Leisha's best friend since childhood. Erica lived in Somerville, North Carolina with her lover, Shanita Cunningham. Serenity was supposed to be at Butts' home for 2 weeks. Little did Leisha know that this was the last time she would see her daughter alive. Serenity had a potty accident in their home while she was staying there. She had urinated on the floor. Because of this, Erica and Shanita beat Serenity with a belt and multiple plastic coat hangers. The two of them continued to beat her until Serenity became unresponsive. When the two of them noticed this, they put bleach under her nose in an attempt to revive her. When she did not respond, they put her body on ice. After they tried everything they could to no avail, Butts called her mother, who called 911. The sight that the medics were met with was horrible. They reported that every inch of Serenity's body was covered in bruises and strikes from the belt. According to the prosecutor, no area of Serenity was unharmed except for the soles of her feet. There were multiple cuts over her chest, stomach, legs and arms, back and head. Serenity was pronounced dead and the women were arrested.
The severity of the blow to that child's leg, and to say that you did not recognize what had been done, to ignore what must have been the excruciating sounds that came from that child on a daily basis, is more than disconcerting to this court.
In court, the two women gave the most disgusting argument possible. The judge who was presiding was dismayed and disturbed by this. They claimed that they didn't know that beating Serenity was going to kill her. During the court hearing, the judge dismissed their argument, saying it's impossible to ignore the cries of pain coming from Serenity. Erica insisted that she was innocent and didn't kill Serenity. She admitted to beating her with the belt, but said that she didn't kill her. Shanita's lawyer said that Erica was aggressive and that she had most of the blame. The judge in charge of the case, Deandra Richardson, wasn't interested in their blame trade. Shanita pled guilty to the charges, but Erica maintained her innocence. Despite this, the two of them were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When they heard this, the two of them collapsed on the floor in the courtroom. Erica's mother also began screaming and had to be escorted out of the courtroom as well. The two convicts were wheeled away to start their sentences. Erica Butts and Shanita Cunningham's horrifying actions left a lasting scar, but the next case takes us to another disturbing crime. Taylor Shabiznes, a woman whose shocking and gruesome actions defy understanding. The woman you just saw is Taylor Shabiznes. On February 23, 2022, the dismembered head of a 24-year-old American named Shad Therian was found in a bucket by his mother in Green Bay, Wisconsin. His mother, Tara Pakanich, called the police and they discovered several bisected body parts in different locations. The perpetrator? Taylor Shabiznes. Therian and Shabiznes had been involved in a relationship for a while, and 2 days before parts of Therian was found, Taylor had picked him up from his mother's house. She took him to another apartment where they had met up with a friend and ingested quantities of hard substances. Shortly after, they were under the influence, so they went back to Therian's apartment. When they arrived, they got intimate in the basement. Tara Pakanich had been out with her boyfriend when her son and Taylor arrived in the house. However, during this process, Taylor strangled Therian until he started to cough up blood, and didn't stop until he gave up. She killed Therian with a metal chain before dismembering his body and putting his head in his mother's basement. She also removed Therian's organs and parts and put them in plastic bags, cardboard boxes, and a storage tote. The particular murder was so gruesome that it is still being talked about. If what Shabiznes did to Therian when he was alive was horrifying, it was later revealed that what she did to him afterwards was even worse.
But when did you start, cutting up his body?
Almost right away. I was sucking and cutting at the same time.
Shabiznes mistreated Therian's body for hours after he died. She sexually assaulted him and mutilated his body with intimate objects after being intimate with the body herself. She admitted this with no ounce of remorse in her behavior, but this was not even enough. Shabiznes appeared in court after she was arrested 3 months later by the police when they found the missing remains of Therian in her minivan. She was charged with intentional homicide, third-degree sexual assault, and mutilation of a corpse, among other counts. Investigation revealed that Taylor Schabusiness had drawn inspiration from the infamous serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer, who had ritualistic habits when he murdered his victims.
You meet the same fate as your idolistic Jeffrey Dahmer. So have a good life, shit business.
Taylor claimed that after she dismembered Tyrion, she drained his blood into the bathtub and took a shower with it. This particularly horrifying revelation shocked the interrogator to the core. Eventually, it was time for Schabusiness to defend her position. However, she had other plans.
Stop it.
During this court appearance on February 23rd, Schabusiness suddenly attacked her lawyer, shocking everyone who was in the courtroom at the time. She hit him in the face before the lawyer fended her off himself, before the officers in the courtroom tried to subdue her. 6 months before this, on September 1st, 2022, the lawyer Schabusiness attacked, Quinn Jolly, had submitted a plea of not guilty by insanity due to the nature of Schabusiness's actions. It seemed that the reason Taylor attacked her attorney in the first place was because Quinn had requested that the trial date be moved back a little. After this incident, however, Quinn told Judge Thomas Walsh that he planned to remove himself from the case after that session. After this outburst and sudden attack from Schabusiness, her future appearances in court showed her wearing a spit guard due to her unpredictable actions. In one of these sessions, Shad Tyrion's uncle told Schabusiness that what she did was horrible, and it was a consequence of her refusing to get help for her condition.
You know, there's help out there. And if you take the path to go get the help, you wouldn't be in this situation right now. None of us would be in this situation. But to take the cowardly path that you did and to make other people suffer because you were suffering is pretty shitty.
Michael Tyrion.
Okay, go ahead.
Taylor, I just wanted to say that I forgive you for what you done to my son. Yeah, you made a bad choice, and now you have to live with it. Like I said, I forgive you, and I'm going to ask the judge if he can, if she can see the streets again sometime,
Schabusiness showed no remorse for anything she had done and was seen smirking on multiple occasions. Judge Walsh didn't think this was right or even permitted in any way, because what Taylor did was so terrifying that the judge said that it offended human decency. The jury took only 30 minutes to decide on their verdicts, and they found Schabusiness guilty of all charges. Even though Schabusiness's new attorney had insisted on a plea of not guilty on the basis of insanity, the jury said that the murder was premeditated and calculated. Schabusiness was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and she showed little to no emotion as her sentence was read to her. We now turn our attention to Shayna Hubers, a young woman whose tumultuous relationship ended in a shocking act of violence.
Has led to her shooting Ryan Poston to death in 2012.
Snapped my neck because of the way that he was jerking my head around.
Ryan Poston was an intelligent young man who majored in history, geography, and political science at Indiana University before attending law school at Northern Kentucky University. After graduating, Ryan embarked on a successful career as an attorney in Cincinnati, Ohio. During this phase, he crossed paths with Shayna Hubers, a 20-year-old woman with whom he embarked on a tumultuous relationship.
Bolte, you are Miss Ohio.
She's Miss Ohio 2012.
3 women remain, only
one of the final 3 at the Miss USA pageant.
Over the next 18 months, Ryan and Shayna broke up nearly a dozen times. Despite their differences, they continued to be drawn back together, driven by an inexplicable force. On October 12, 2012, Ryan and Shayna found themselves in an off period of their relationship. Ryan, in fact, had plans to go on a date with the Miss Ohio USA 2012 winner that night. Little did he know that his life would soon be cut short. Later that night, Shayna called 911 from Ryan's apartment, telling the dispatcher that she had shot and killed him. The dispatcher immediately dispatched police and paramedics to the scene, where they found Ryan's lifeless body lying in a pool of blood. After her arrest, Shayna was interviewed by detectives, where she made several disturbing statements. She called Ryan very vain, seemingly attempting to shift blame onto him. Further, she expressed doubts that anyone would want to marry her after knowing she had shot him in self-defense. During the interrogation, Shayna's behavior became increasingly erratic when she was left alone. Shayna began dancing and singing Amazing Grace, seemingly oblivious to the seriousness of her situation. She even confessed, saying, "I did it. Yes, I did it. I can't believe I did that.
Not a murderer at all. Now, the past several days, the Commonwealth attorney has been calling witness after witness, many testifying that Hubers intentionally killed.
Shayna was charged with first-degree murder. Her bail was set at a staggering $5 million, ensuring she would remain in custody until her trial. In 2015, Shayna's trial began, lasting 2 weeks and culminating with the jury deliberating for 5 hours before delivering a guilty verdict. However, the defense would later uncover that a juror who sat on her trial was a felon, casting doubts on the fairness of the verdict. As a result, the ruling was overturned and Shayna was granted a new trial.
Will try to once again prove Hubers murdered her ex-boyfriend Ryan Poston. Hubers says it was an act of self-defense when she shot Poston in his Highland Heights condo.
In 2018, Shayna faced trial for the second time in connection to the tragic murder of her boyfriend, Ryan Poston. This trial brought attention to the relationship between Shayna and Ryan, which delved into explicit details of their romantic life. The defense argued that Ryan's behavior towards Shayna was like a yo-yo, pushing her away and then pulling her back, causing confusion and mixed messages. However, the prosecution presented a compelling argument, reminding jurors that it was Shayna who closed the distance between them and fired the initial shot, ultimately choosing to shoot him in the head 5 more times.
We believe was a family member or a friend. Opening statements were made this morning in which the prosecution said that Shayna Hubers was a cold, calculating woman.
According to the prosecutors, Shayna was relentless in her pursuit of Ryan. They presented evidence showing that she texted and called him excessively. Furthermore, during the interrogation process, Shayna was recorded saying, "I'm good at acting." This statement raised suspicions among the prosecution, as they believed she was putting on a facade to deceive the police.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder.
Guilty! The woman who shot her boyfriend because he was about to ditch her for a Miss USA contest.
After the jury left to deliberate, it ultimately took 5 hours for them to once again find Shayna guilty of Ryan's murder. As the guilty verdict was read, Shayna leaned forward, buried her face in her attorney's lap, and cried. During the sentencing phase, the judge told Shayna that her actions were grossly violent and intentionally calculated. This assessment led him to conclude that a life sentence was the most appropriate punishment.
The jury found that you intentionally murdered Ryan Poston. You picked up Mr. Poston's gun from the kitchen table and shot him 6 times.
As Judge Zala handed down the sentence, the courtroom remained silent. Shayna maintained an emotionless expression, seemingly unaffected by the gravity of the situation. In an attempt to sway the judge, Shayna's attorney requested a mistrial. However, the judge denied the motion. In the next case, we'll delve into the chilling tale of Dynell Lane, a heinous female murderer who committed a truly unimaginable act.
She's spoken publicly about what happened on that day in March just once. She said that when Lane started attacking her, she told her that she loved, hoping that she might stop. Wilkins says Lane responded, "If you love me, you will let me do this."
On March 18, 2018, Michelle Wilkins, 7 months pregnant, responded to a Craigslist advertisement for baby clothes. Michelle had no way of knowing that her encounter with Dynell Lane, a 35-year-old woman, would turn into a horrifying nightmare. Dynell Lane invited Michelle into her home under the guise of selling baby clothes. However, when Michelle arrived, she discovered that Dynell had other intentions.
After the verdict, Michelle Wilkins sat in a quiet room and reflected on the most difficult time of her life.
I forgive her whether she asked my forgiveness or not.
She also shared a tragically personal moment.
Dynell led Michelle down to the basement where her sinister plan unfolded. In the basement, Dynell, armed with a lava lamp, violently assaulted Michelle. She hit Michelle in the head, leaving her disoriented. Escalating the situation, Dynell used a piece of broken glass to stab Michelle in the neck. With Michelle helpless on the ground, Dynell, in a twisted act of violence, cut open Michelle's stomach and removed the unborn baby girl from her uterus.
I did all the things that, a mom would want to do. I read to her, I dressed her, but not being able to witness her first breath.
After cutting baby Aurora from her mother's womb, Dynell left Michelle to bleed out in the basement. Dynell's husband, David Ridley, arrived home from work. When he arrived, he found Dynell covered in blood.
And they go back into this bedroom. This is their room number 10. And let me tell you what happened.
Dynell, in a panicked state, told David that she had a miscarriage in the upstairs bathtub. David and Dynell rushed the baby girl to the hospital, hoping to save her life. Unfortunately, the baby did not survive.
So the record will be clear. I'll try to ask you
specific questions, and you can answer them best you can. So you then went downstairs with the defendant.
Yes.
Michelle Wilkins miraculously survived the assault and was taken to the hospital herself. When Michelle was receiving treatment, the doctors became suspicious of Dinell's story. The doctors noticed that she showed no signs of having just given birth, leading them to question her account.
Now this is one of those questions of why. Who knows why? David Ridley told you he didn't want kids. You know that Miss Lane had 2 other children of her own.
Soon, the truth began to unfold. It was revealed that Dinell had lied to her husband and children for months about being pregnant. She had created a ruse to make everyone believe that she was having a baby, even going as far as posting fake ultrasound photos on social media.
Now this is one of those questions of why. Who knows why? David Ridley told you he didn't want kids. You know that Miss Lane had 2 other children of her own. Why did she fake this pregnancy? We don't know.
However, as Dinell's fake due date approached, she found herself in need of a baby. Desperate to fill her desires, she created an ad online and lured an unsuspecting pregnant woman to her home. Her goal was to steal the baby and continue her facade of being pregnant.
As we get into things starting today, of course, jury selection begins and 300 potential jurors will be summoned. Of course, that will be narrowed down to just a few.
Dinell was charged with attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree assault, 2 counts of second-degree assault, and unlawful termination of a pregnancy. She was unable to be charged with the baby's death due to Colorado law. Despite this technicality, the jurors still convicted Dinell on all charges, and the judge sentenced her to 100 years in prison.
Lane, in prior court appearances, she remains in custody at the Boulder County Jail on $2 million bond, and if she gets convicted...
Throughout the trial, Dinell maintained a stoic demeanor, showing no emotion as the case details unfolded. However, upon hearing the judge's sentencing, Dinell broke down in tears. One of the trial's most compelling moments came when an interview tape was played for the jury.
Lane admitted to strangling Wilkins, then she admitted to cutting out Wilkins' baby. Listen.
I got the knife that she had.
In this tape, Dinell claimed that Michelle possessed the knife during the altercation. Although this statement was refuted by other evidence, it seemed to elicit a reaction from Dinell, as she could be seen crying during the playback. While Dinell herself chose not to testify, her friends and family felt the emotional impact of her case deeply. They spoke on her behalf, sharing stories of a loving and compassionate woman they knew.
I choose to use my time to address you directly, Dinell, because up to this very moment you have refused to acknowledge us, the victims of your violent actions.
During the trial, Michelle had the opportunity to confront Dinell head-on, delivering a powerful statement. Holding a large picture of her daughter, Aurora, Michelle addressed the defendant, saying, "You'd knowingly left me to die multiple times. The only tears you shed during the trial were those of self-pity, to the sound of your voice as your lies were slowly revealed."
Anger was valid, and I also felt the compassion, and I reached a comfortable place where I could experience both of those.
That is Michelle Wilkins.
Michelle emphasized her desire for justice, advocating for a maximum sentence for Dinell. She believed such a sentence would allow Dinell time to atone, reflect, and meditate with prayer and action. Her intention was for Dinell to truly understand the gravity of her actions and their impact on everyone involved. Dinell Lane's shocking crime left an innocent life lost, but the next case brings us to an equally disturbing story. Janelle Boer, a woman whose cruel actions forever changed the lives of those around her.
My husband and I were in an argument, and he shot me, and then he killed himself.
On February 14, 2017, 43-year-old Janelle Boer called 911 in Michigan because her husband had been shot and killed in their home. When the police officers arrived at the scene, they found out that 35-year-old Gregory Boer was dead from a single gunshot wound to his head in the basement of his home. When they looked around, they found Janelle Boer in the garage with a gunshot wound to the arm. She said she called 911 after she got into a fight with Gregory. Janelle and Gregory were going through a divorce and had been estranged for a while. They shared 2 children, and on the day of the murder, neither were around. After the police assessed the situation, they asked Janelle what had happened. She claimed that she and Gregory had been fighting when he suddenly pulled out his gun and shot her in the arm. She said that he shot himself afterwards, and that was when she called the police. The only issue with her story was the way the crime scene looked and the position in which Gregory had fallen. Immediately, police believed that Janelle was lying and ruled the death a homicide instead of suicide.
Tapped him across the head with my open hand, like that. He just went crazy. He grabbed the gun and shot up.
How many times?
I don't know.
When forensic tests were conducted, it was soon revealed that Gregory Boer had not shot himself. In fact, it was Janelle who shot him before firing more rounds into the room. She was also the one who shot herself in the arm because she needed the police to believe the story. Janelle was arrested and charged with open murder and felony firearm charges. Further investigation showed that after Janelle killed Gregory, she rearranged the scene of the murder to make it look like she was telling the truth. Janelle claimed that Gregory was an abusive and violent man, but every other person who knew him said otherwise. As such, after Janelle was charged, she entered a guilty plea for second-degree murder, which inevitably reduced the possibility of her being sentenced to life in prison. In February 2018, Janelle finally stood in court as her former in-laws gave impact statements. Sharon Boer, Gregory's mother, told the court and Janelle that her son didn't have to die. She said, "You had no right to kill my son. He did nothing but believe you, take you in, and love you. I can only hope that where you are going, you get all of the attention you crave and more."
I will never forgive you for what you've done. You've shattered our lives, and most importantly, the lives of Greg's children. I only wish I could trade your worthless, selfish, pathetic life for Greg's.
Gregory's younger brother also gave an impact statement. He addressed Janelle and told her that her actions robbed Gregory of seeing their children grow into their people. He also told her, "I hope you rot." Before Janelle was sentenced, she simply turned and apologized to the judge for taking Gregory's life. She was sentenced to 17 to 19 years in prison. Janelle Boer killed her husband for reasons that turned out to be lies. How does it compare to a woman who killed her husband to hide the lies she was telling him?
She was convicted and sentenced to life without parole.
From a young age, Kristen Rossum developed an interest in smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. She was in high school when she started this habit. It was not sure what she needed them for, but she soon gravitated towards marijuana. However, she said it had a little effect, so in 1992, Rossum started using meth. In 1994, she suffered a relapse and had to leave university. Eventually, she soon conquered her addiction and enrolled at San Diego University. There, she met Greg DeVillers, and they started dating. Rossum graduated with honors in 1998 and started working as a toxicologist. She got married to DeVillers in 1999. This happy life didn't last long because Rossum started an affair with her boss, Dr. Michael Robertson, in 2000. Later that year, DeVillers was horrified to learn that not only had she been cheating on him, she had also continued using meth. She got access to the drug with help of her lover, who was also her enabler. DeVillers threatened to expose both of them to the medical examiner if she did not quit her job and leave Robertson. On November 6, 2000, Rossum called 911 at night and said that DeVillers had committed suicide. When paramedics arrived, they were met with a strange sight. DeVillers was unresponsive in their bed, and there were rose petals sprinkled around him. He was pronounced dead, and Rossum told the police he had committed suicide. Despite this, DeVillers' family said this wasn't true and that he was not suicidal. Reluctantly, the police opened a homicide investigation. Because Rossum worked as a toxicologist at the medical center in San Diego, DeVillers' autopsy was outsourced to an outside lab to avoid conflict of interest. 1 month after DeVillers died, Rossum and Robertson were fired because of Rossum's meth habit and Robertson enabling her. Soon enough, the test results came back and they showed that he had 7 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. Something was off and the police began to take the case seriously. 7 months after DeVillers' murder, Rossum was arrested and charged with murder. During interrogation, she claimed that she had gone to work in the morning and returned home in the afternoon to give her sick husband a bowl of soup. She went back to work before she returned home around 7 p.m. She said it was after she showered and entered the bedroom that she discovered DeVillers lying motionless on the bed.
2 more breaths. Pump his chest 15 more times. Okay, 2 more breaths. You're doing fine.
The 911 call sounded like Rossum had been administering CPR, but this didn't clear her of guilt. She was charged to court where a receipt for a single red rose that Rossum bought was presented. The defense claimed that DeVillers had crumpled the rose around himself after using fentanyl. However, the amount of fentanyl in his system showed that this wasn't possible. Tests also revealed that the dose of fentanyl had been administered around the time that Rossum went home and gave her husband soup. Prosecutors claimed that Rossum had killed her husband to hide her affair and her meth addiction. So, on November 12, 2002, Rossum was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and a $10,000 fine. In a very short clip, she could be seen crying. Kristen Rossum killed her husband to hide her addiction and affair. Michelle Despain killed hers so she could be with another person and cash in on her husband's death.
Preston, your father.
My father?
Yes, ma'am. Your father will be arrested for murder. I have all the information, all the evidence I need.
Not Mark's father.
No, ma'am. Your father.
Mark Despain was a successful property investor and real estate appraiser in Jonesboro. He lived a fairly successful life with his wife Michelle and his stepdaughter, Michelle's daughter from a previous relationship. Mark Despain had been in a family business with his parents before Michelle came along. Because of the constant arguments based on lies that Michelle had been feeding her husband about his parents, Mark and his parents soon fell out, and he started his business with Michelle managing their money. Michelle intended to isolate Mark from his family so she could do as she liked with his finances. So, in another desperate attempt to do so, she had her daughter take intimate photos of herself and had them sent to Jack's phone. She claimed that Jack Despain, Mark's father, had forced her daughter to take those pictures. Soon, Jack was arrested and his wife, Tana Despain, left him. After a couple of years, Michelle's daughter started to cave and kept on mixing details about the alleged incident. Because of this, Jack was released and his wife came back to him, realizing he wasn't an evil person. This already damaged their relationship, and Michelle Despain succeeded in isolating her husband from his family. This gave her the chance to spend Mark's money on her lover, a much younger banker where she worked. Soon, Mark started failing and somehow ended up in debt of over $1 million. After Michelle learned that Mark had bought a life insurance policy, she began to plan something deadly.
What happened to your husband, ma'am? He's dead. Oh, no. Ma'am, I need you to take a deep breath, okay, and tell me what's going on.
In August 2011, Michelle came back from work and found Despain dead in their home. He had been shot in the head and the chest. Michelle called 911 and the police first thought that this was just a burglary gone wrong. However, when they realized that things robbers would take were in place, they got suspicious. It also didn't help that Michelle and her father, Carl Kelly, kept pointing and accusing Jack Despain of killing his son.
I mean, I hate to think that his dad would do anything like that because it is his son, but he's just very...
With the conflicting stories and the fact that the case didn't have much evidence to go on, Mark's body was released to Michelle and he was buried. Even in death, Michelle isolated Mark from his family, and they were only allowed to see Mark right before he was buried. The case was stumped until the police received a tip from an anonymous person. They were told that a man named Terrence Barker was bragging that he had killed Mark. They were also informed that on the day of the murder, an old blue Mercedes was circling the area of Mark's home. Barker was arrested and he quickly admitted that he had killed Mark. However, he didn't know him and he was just offered thousands of dollars to carry out the hit. He said that the person that approached him was Johnny Hubbard, one of Mark's tenants in the buildings he owned. Michelle's father was a rent collector in the building where Johnny was living. Coincidentally, Johnny owned the Mercedes that the police learned about. After Johnny was arrested, he quickly implicated Carl Kelly, saying that he had given him access to Mark's house.
If you don't do what he tells you to do, you get on the street.
Kelly was arrested, and when Michelle learned about it, she turned on him saying that he probably killed her husband so he could have a share in Mark's massive life insurance policy. However, when detectives got access to the phones of Kelly, Barker, Johnny, and Michelle, they found out that there was more to the story. On the day of the murder, Michelle had texted her father, "It has to be today." She then tricked Mark to get out of the house while Kelly gave Barker access to the house. Michelle was arrested and charged with the murder of her husband.
My father?
Yes, ma'am. Your father will be arrested for murder. I have all the information, all the evidence I need.
Not Mark's father.
No, ma'am. Your father.
Carl Kelly and Terrence Barker were sentenced to 35 years in prison for first-degree murder. Johnny Hubbard got 18 years for hindering apprehension and violation of a previous probation he was on. Carl Kelly died of congestive heart failure soon after. In 2014, Michelle bargained for a plea deal by pleading guilty to 3 counts of hindering apprehension. She avoided a capital murder charge and she was sentenced to 30 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 5 years. The actions of these ruthless women left behind a trail of death, deception, and unanswered questions. Their crimes shook communities to the core, and their reactions in court revealed just how cold and calculated they truly were.